I used to think my habits were my escape, but I finally realized they were actually my prison. I was trying to find a door out of my pain, but every time I reached for that fix, I was just walking deeper into a room with no windows.
That's the deception of this serenity robber. Escape tells you that you can't handle the light, so you have to stay in the dark. But God says, wake up, sleeper. He doesn't want us to just numb the pain. He wants to shine his light on us and show us the real way out. A way out that leads to freedom, not just a temporary blackout. If you're tired of running to those dead ends, it's time to stop escaping and start waking up to the grace that's waiting for you.
Welcome to the cafe, everyone. It is incredibly good to be sitting down with you today.
Yeah, it really is.
I am sitting here with my good friend, and, well, we are two leaders at the Celebrate Recovery at Peters Creek Baptist Church in South Park, Pennsylvania.
That's right. We are your peers, we're your friends, and we're walking this road of recovery right alongside you.
We really are. And today, we're continuing our series on the Serenity Robbers, taking a really close look at Part 4, which is the robber known as Escape.
It's a heavy one, you know.
It is. Our mission today is to lean into the Celebrate Recovery curriculum, ground ourselves in the Word of God, and figure out the specific architecture of the hiding places we build.
Right, and why we build them in the first place.
Exactly. Why we build them and how the grace of Jesus Christ actually dismantles them for good.
It's a profound mission for our time together because, well, escape is the one serenity robber that arrives disguised as a medic.
Oh, wow. Disguised as a medic. I like that.
Yeah, because if you think about resentment or anger or jealousy, those robbers, they announce themselves as hostile forces.
Right. You feel them burning in your chest.
Exactly, and you know they are doing damage. But escape walks in quietly when you are at your absolute lowest.
Yeah.
Like when the pain of your hurts, hang-ups, and habits has reached this fever pitch and it just whispers, I can give you a break. I can offer you sanctuary.
Sanctuary. You know, that is the exact word that comes to mind. We have this internal reality that feels like a room we are trapped inside.
Yeah, a small room.
Right. You're standing in the center of your own life, and suddenly the walls just feel like they are closing in on you.
Absolutely. The anxiety of a broken relationship or the shame of a past failure.
Or just the sheer crushing weight of daily stress.
Yeah.
It becomes this deafening noise, you know?
Yeah, the emotional threshold is just breached.
Right. And the immediate, desperate human reaction is, I have to leave this room. I need an exit right now.
And honestly, that desire to leave the room is completely understandable. It
Yeah.
is. It is vital that we approach this with immense compassion for ourselves and, well, for each other.
Totally. Because before we understand surrender, before we truly grasp step one and admit that we are powerless, we are operating strictly on our own limited strength.
Right, and human strength has a breaking point.
It absolutely does.
When the internal pain surpasses our ability to process it, we experience this profound emotional and spiritual overload.
We just lack the tools to endure it.
Exactly, and we haven't yet accessed the grace to heal it.
So, we basically start engineering our own dissociation.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
We say, if I cannot change the terrifying reality inside this room, I'm just going to build a trapdoor and drop right out of it.
But the problem, and this is the core tragedy of this specific serenity robber, is that the trapdoors we build are entirely fake.
Completely fake.
They are an illusion of sanctuary. They don't lead outside to the fresh air.
Right. They lead straight into a darker, smaller closet with no handles on the inside.
That is the perfect way to frame it. We are not just sitting around passively wishing we could vanish.
No, we're working at it.
Right. We're actively using specific tools to construct these false exits. We are building the very prisons that will eventually hold us captive.
It's so true. And when we examine the lessons of recovery and, you know, the lived experiences of the people who walk through the doors of our church, we see three dominant tools.
Yeah. 3 specific ways we hide from our pain.
And those 3 tools are getting involved in unhealthy relationships,
Yeah.
abusing drugs such as alcohol, and eating unhealthily or refusing to eat.
Now, on the surface, those look like 3 completely different struggles, right?
Oh, totally. You might look at someone with a substance issue and someone who is hyper-controlling their food and think, well, they have nothing in common.
But the underlying mechanism, the emotional architecture, is exactly the same.
It really is.
They are all desperate attempts to control reality by leaving the room.
Exactly. They're all forms of emotional anesthesia. So let's look closely at the first tool, which is getting involved in unhealthy relationships.
This one is incredibly deceptive.
It is, because we are biologically and spiritually wired for connection, right? We are meant to be in a relationship with God and with others.
But in the context of escape, our relationship is weaponized.
Yeah. It ceases to be about connection and becomes entirely about distraction.
I know this one intimately, my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to think I was just a naturally giving person, a
Of
helper.
the classic help.
Right. I thought my primary role in life was to fix other people's chaos.
But I'm guessing it took a lot of hard work in recovery to realize that your helping was actually a deeply selfish act of hiding.
It did. It really did.
What was the internal mechanism happening there for you?
It's like, imagine your own house is on fire. The flames are licking up the walls, the smoke is filling the living room, and it is terrifying.
Right.
But instead of dealing with the fire in your own house, you run across the street to your neighbor's house.
Okay.
You barge through their front door, and you start frantically rearranging their living room furniture.
Oh, wow. That is a painful image.
You are sweating, you are working hard, you are completely consumed by making sure their couch is perfectly aligned with their window.
And while you are doing this, you feel noble, right? You feel busy.
Exactly. You feel essential, all while your own house burns to the ground behind you.
Exactly. Because if I am obsessing over your problems, if I'm trying to manage your addiction or your anger or your financial ruin, I literally do not have the bandwidth to look at my own smoldering pain.
It's the perfect distraction.
It really is. The unhealthy relationship becomes this massive, all-consuming project that I use to drown out the silence of my own empty room.
You are projecting your need for healing onto them.
Yeah. I convince myself, if I can just fix this person, if I can just make them see the light, well, then I will finally feel okay.
It provides a massive hit of false purpose.
It does.
And that false purpose is the anesthesia. You are using the drama and the intense, unpredictable weather of a toxic relationship to numb your own internal void.
And the tragedy is that you become completely dependent on their dysfunction,
Totally. If they were to suddenly get healthy, your distraction would vanish.
Right. And you would be forced to look in the mirror.
That is why codependency is such a brutal form of escape. It chains two drowning people together.
And because it looks like loyalty to the outside world, it is incredibly hard to identify as a serenity robber.
Yeah.
We get praised for our loyalty to unhealthy people.
We really do. But let's look at the second tool, which is much more universally recognized as an escape.
Right, abusing drugs, such as alcohol.
This is the literal chemical application of a fake exit.
When the emotional landscape of reality becomes intolerable, substance abuse is the attempt to artificially alter that landscape.
We are talking about using a chemical to completely sever the soul from the present moment.
It's the pursuit of a borrowed tomorrow.
Oh, I love that phrase. It captures the transaction perfectly.
Yeah, because you are feeling a deep, agonizing pain today. Maybe it's the trauma of childhood, or maybe it's a crushing sense of inadequacy.
And the substance offers you a deal.
Right. It says, I will take away this pain for the next 4 hours, but I'm going to charge you interest, and I'm going to collect it tomorrow morning.
And the interest rate is exorbitant.
It really is.
Alcohol, for example, is a depressant. It artificially suppresses the central nervous system.
It literally lowers the volume on your physical and emotional receptors.
You take the drink, and the sharp edges of your reality begin to blur. The memories that were screaming at you reduce to a whisper.
So for a brief, fleeting window of time, the room you were trapped in doesn't feel so terrifying.
Exactly. You have achieved emotional anesthesia.
But the underlying frequency of the pain hasn't changed at all, right?
Not even a little bit.
You haven't resolved the trauma. You haven't repaired the broken relationship. You haven't found peace with God.
You have just unplugged the warning light on your dashboard.
Precisely. And when the chemical wears off, reality comes rushing back with a vengeance.
Yeah. The pain is not only still there, waiting for you, but it is now compounded by the shame of the escape itself.
So you wake up with the original hurt, plus the guilt of what you did while you were numb, plus the physical depletion of the substance.
So the room is now darker, and the walls are closer. What do?
You reach for the fake exit again. The tool of escape has now become the master.
It is a terrifying cycle, and it leads us directly into the third tool, which operates on the exact same cycle of demand and depletion.
But this one is often much harder to talk about.
It is. We're talking about eating unhealthily or refusing to eat.
And food as a mechanism for escape is so complex because, well, unlike a toxic relationship you can leave, or alcohol you can abstain from, you cannot abstain from food.
Right. You have to eat to survive.
So how does a biological necessity transform into a serenity robber.
It transforms when we separate food from its intended purpose, which is nourishment and provision from God, and turn it into a hyper-focused tool for emotional management.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
The spectrum of this escape is wide, but it generally operates on two extreme ends. We can call them the flood and the fortress.
The flood and the fortress, break that down for me.
The flood is the act of compulsive overeating or binging. When the internal pain is sharp, when the feelings of abandonment or worthlessness are piercing you, the act of consuming large quantities of food creates a massive sensory override.
A sensory override, wow.
Yeah. The sheer physical sensation of extreme fullness, the temporary soothing comfort of the food itself, creates a physiological flood that drowns out the emotional distress.
So you are trying to fill a spiritual void with a physical substance.
Exactly. It is a desperate attempt to feel comfort when your world feels entirely cold.
And the fortress.
The fortress is the opposite extreme. It's refusing to eat or severely restricting food.
Okay.
This is an escape built entirely on the illusion of control.
Think about someone whose life feels utterly chaotic.
Right. Maybe they have suffered profound abuse, or their family is falling apart, or they feel entirely invisible and powerless in their daily life.
The room is just spinning out of control.
So they look for one single domain where they can exercise absolute dictatorial authority.
And they choose their own body.
Yes, they narrow their entire world down to a single plate.
Man, the restriction becomes a rigid, impenetrable fortress.
If you can control every single calorie, if you can master the sensation of hunger, if you can adhere to punishingly strict rules, well, you experience a false sense of absolute power.
The escape isn't found in comfort. It's found in the intense, blinding focus on the rules.
Exactly. The eating disorder demands every ounce of your mental bandwidth.
So you don't have time or energy to process the trauma of your past because you are too busy calculating the exact geometry of your next meal.
Exactly. But I have to pause here and really push back on this.
Okay, push back.
Because I am putting myself in the shoes of someone who is currently trapped in one of these three hiding places.
Yeah, that's important to do.
If I am the person restricting my food, or if I am the person pouring all my energy into a toxic relationship, or relying on that evening drink just to stop my hands from shaking from the inside, this does not feel like a fake exit.
No, it feels like literal survival.
Right. If I let go of this restriction, I feel like my entire world will fracture into a million pieces.
Yeah, or if I don't focus on my partner's chaos, the silence in my own head will crush me.
So how can we sit here and tell someone that their primary coping mechanism is a robber when they genuinely believe it is the only thing keeping them alive?
How do we convince ourselves that this destruction is actually self-preservation?
We convince ourselves it is self-preservation because, in the very beginning, the lie is wrapped in a partial truth.
And what's that?
It actually works.
Oh, man. That is a hard truth to admit in a recovery setting, but it is entirely accurate.
We have to be brutally honest about it.
We do.
The first time someone uses a substance to numb a severe trauma, they experience a profound, shocking relief.
Yeah. The first time someone restricts their food to manage their spiraling anxiety, they feel a rush of perceived safety.
We learn instantly that these tools provide immediate, short-term relief from unbearable agony.
Because when you are drowning, you don't inspect the life preserver to see if it's made of lead.
You just grab it because it keeps your head above water for one more second.
The operative phrase being, one more second.
Precisely. We mistake short-term relief for long-term safety.
And the transition from a hiding place to a prison happens subtly, right in the shadows.
The tool begins to demand more than it provides. The illusion of sanctuary requires a heavier and heavier toll.
And that toll is our very life force.
Which brings us to a massive realization on the road to recovery, the energy drain.
We spend so much time talking about the moral or social consequences of our habits, but we often ignore the sheer physiological and spiritual depletion of them.
Because numbing is not a passive state.
Right. It is not like falling asleep. Hiding is an active, ongoing, daily, grueling labor.
It is the most demanding full-time job in the world.
Think about the mental gymnastics required to maintain a secret addiction.
The constant calculation of where you will get your next drink, how you will hide the evidence, what lies you need to tell to cover your tracks.
Or think about the agonizing emotional labor of managing a highly toxic, codependent relationship.
Constantly walking on eggshells, anticipating their moods, absorbing their anger.
Or the relentless grinding arithmetic of an eating disorder. It takes an unbelievable amount of energy to keep reality at bay.
You are constantly building and rebuilding the walls of your fake exit.
And this leads to a profound reality regarding our emotional spectrum.
We operate under this tragic misconception that we can selectively numb our feelings.
We really do. We
Yeah.
think we have a highly calibrated surgical tool that allows us to just numb the shame, the guilt, the terror, and the sadness.
While leaving our capacity for joy, peace, love, and connection fully intact.
I tried that surgery for years, my friend. I thought, I just want to turn off the anxiety, but I still want to feel the love of my family.
But it does not work that way, does it?
No, it is a biological and spiritual impossibility.
It is entirely impossible. Our emotional capacity is a singular spectrum. The anesthesia does not discriminate.
When you numb the dark, you inevitably numb the light.
When you use these tools of escape to flatten out your profound sadness, you inadvertently flatten out your capacity for joy.
You begin to walk through your life as a shadow. You aren't actually living, you are merely existing in a state of managed suppression.
You become a shell.
Yeah. You are physically present at the dinner table, but you are a million miles away, entirely consumed by the management of your escape.
And managing that suppression requires a constant, unending output of strength.
I want to share a picture of what this looks like, because when I first heard this analogy, it just completely shattered my understanding of what I was doing to myself.
I'd love to hear it.
Imagine you are standing inside a room, and outside the door of this room is a fierce, howling wind.
Okay.
That wind represents all your unaddressed pain, your unresolved trauma, your deep-seated fears, and the reality of your past.
And you are terrified of that wind.
You believe that if it gets inside, it will tear you apart.
So what do?
You walk over to the heavy wooden door and you slam it shut.
Right.
But the latch is broken, so you have to put your shoulder against the wood, you brace your feet against the floorboards, and you push.
The wind howls and batters against the outside.
And you use every single ounce of your muscular strength to hold that door closed.
And for a while, you succeed.
Yes. You keep the wind out. You're standing there, trembling, sweat pouring down your face, but the room is quiet.
The problem is, holding that door demands everything you have.
Your muscles are burning. Your joints are screaming. You cannot take a single step backward.
You cannot turn your head, you cannot let go for a fraction of a second, or the door will fly violently open.
You are entirely immobilized.
You are safe from the wind, but you are a prisoner to the door.
Exactly. You have kept the pain out, but you are left with zero power to actually turn around and live in the room you are defending.
You can't engage with your spouse.
You can't play with your children. You can't pursue the calling God has placed on your life.
You can't experience a single moment of genuine peace because you are perpetually, agonizingly pinned against the door.
And the tragic irony is that we convince ourselves this is a noble way to live.
We mistake this constant draining of our strength, this absolute depletion of our soul, for safety.
Why do we do that? If we are burning alive with the effort of holding the door, why do we think this is a good life?
Because our fear of the wind is absolute.
Right.
When we are operating without God's grace, we truly believe that the pain will annihilate us.
Therefore, the burning in our muscles, the absolute emptiness of our days, the profound isolation of standing against that door alone, we accept all of that as the necessary price of survival.
We tell ourselves, yes, I am drained. Yes, I am hollow. Yes, I have no joy. But at least I am not destroyed.
We accept a slow fading away over a sudden impact.
A slow fading away. That is the ultimate definition of the serenity robber of escape.
Is the fading out of your own existence. You spend your entire life bracing for an impact that you are already suffering from.
But here is the reality of human limitation. We cannot hold the door forever.
No, we are not designed to carry that weight. Eventually, our strength fails. Our knees buckle.
We hit what we call in recovery rock bottom.
The moment of collapse.
Yes. The muscles bid out and the heavy door swings wide open.
The wind we spent decades trying to hold back finally rushes into the room.
It is the moment of ultimate terror.
But it is also the moment the entire narrative of our life can shift. Because when the door opens, something else comes in with the wind.
The light breaks in.
This is the pivot from the darkness of our own desperate failing efforts to the profound, miraculous solution provided by God.
When our strength fails, when we are finally forced to stop holding the door shut and let reality in, we discover something that defies all human logic.
We discovered that the very thing we feared most, the exposure of our truth, is actually the foundational source of our healing.
We discovered the true light.
To understand this, we have to turn directly to the Word of God.
The Word of God is the ultimate authority on the human condition.
It speaks to this exact dynamic of hiding and exposure with stunning clarity. I want to read a passage that has served as a lifeline for countless people who have been trapped in the cycle of escape.
Please do.
It is from the book of Ephesians, chapter 5, verses 13 and 14.
It is one of the most powerful passages in the New Testament. Let's hear it.
The Apostle Paul writes, "Everything exposed by the light becomes visible, and everything that is illuminated becomes the light. That is why it is said, 'Wake up, sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you.'"
Wow. We really need to sit with the weight of those words. Wake up, sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you.
It is both a loving invitation and a highly urgent command. Let's look at the identity being addressed here. What does it mean to be a sleeper in the context of our recovery journey?
When I hear the word sleeper in this context, I don't picture someone resting peacefully in a bed.
Right.
I picture someone who has successfully achieved the emotional anesthesia we were just talking about. A sleeper is someone who is totally numb.
They are physically breathing, their heart is beating, they are walking around going to work and paying bills, but they are completely checked out of their own existence.
They are living in a spiritual coma.
Exactly. They are wrapped up so tightly in their fake exits, the toxic relationships, the alcohol, the severe food restriction, that those very tools have lulled them into a state of the walking dead.
Being a sleeper means you have successfully escaped your pain, but the horrific cost of your escape is that you are dead to the world, dead to yourself, and dead to God.
So the command to wake up is not just a call to open your eyes. It is a call to return to reality.
It is God telling us, let go of the heavy door, turn around, face the room.
But he doesn't just demand that we face the dark. He promises what will happen when we do.
And this is where the passage challenges everything we thought we knew about hiding.
The scripture says, everything exposed by the light becomes visible. Now, let's just be honest. That first half of the sentence is our absolute greatest nightmare.
Oh yeah, that is the exact reason we held the door shut for 20 years.
We do not want our shame, our failures, our brokenness, our secret addictions, and our deep hurts to become visible.
Because in our limited human understanding, we equate visibility with condemnation.
We believe that if people truly saw the depths of our mess, we would be rejected, cast out, and unlovable.
We project our own self-hatred onto God, assuming his light is an interrogation spotlight designed to expose us for punishment.
But the verse doesn't stop at visibility. It carries a promise that is an absolute paradox to the human mind.
It says, everything exposed by the light becomes visible, and everything that is illuminated becomes a light.
Becomes a light. The profound alchemy of grace.
I cannot get over the beauty of that truth.
The very things we are hiding, the ugly, shameful, painful, shattered pieces of our story that we swore we would take to the grave, when they are finally brought out of the dark closet of our fake exits and illuminated by the grace of Jesus Christ, they don't just sit there on the floor being ugly.
They are fundamentally transformed in their nature. They become a light.
The transformation of pain is the bedrock of what we learn in recovery. We serve a God who is the ultimate redeemer.
He does not waste a single drop of our pain.
When we finally surrender our illusions of sanctuary and allow his healing light to hit our deepest, most infected wounds, a miraculous shift occurs.
The shame is burned away by his grace, and what is left in its place is a powerful, undeniable testimony.
Your past pain, the exact thing you spent decades draining your life force to escape, is repurposed.
It transforms from a source of agonizing shame into a beacon of hope for someone else who is currently wandering in the dark.
It is the ultimate defeat of the serenity robber. Escape looks you in the eye and tells you that your pain is a permanent, toxic stain that must be hidden at all costs, or it will ruin you.
But God's light tells you that your pain, once surrendered to him, is the exact instrument he will use to bring freedom to others.
I have seen this miracle happen time and time again in our small groups at the cafe.
It is the most holy ground you can stand on.
You will have a circle of people, and someone will finally find the courage to let go of the door. They will share the deepest, darkest secret they have been carrying.
They will name the thing they drank to forget, or the trauma they starved themselves to control. They drag it into the light.
And as they are speaking, you can see them physically brace themselves. They are shrinking back, fully expecting the circle to reject them.
They are bracing for the condemnation they have always feared.
Yes. But then the miracle happens. Someone across the circle, who has been carrying their own heavy door, looks up with tears in their eyes and says, "Me too. I thought I was the only one in the world who felt that way."
In that exact beautiful moment, the illuminated pain becomes a light.
It literally guides another human being out of their own dark closet. The shame is broken not by hiding it, but by sharing it in the light of Christ.
That is the power of fellowship, and it is the mechanism of our healing.
It truly is.
But I want to honor the difficulty of this process. Let me pose a question to you, because I know there are people listening right now who are feeling a massive tension.
Oh.
They hear this promise and they want it. But the terror of exposure is still very real. Doesn't the light sting at first?
Yeah, that's a fair question.
How do we find the courage to stand in that bright, illuminating truth when our first deeply ingrained instinct is to run straight back to our fake exits? It feels so painfully exposed.
I appreciate you bringing that up because we cannot sugarcoat this. It absolutely stings at first.
It does.
Think about the physical reality of being locked in a pitch-black room for 20 years. Your eyes have completely adjusted to the dark.
Right.
If someone suddenly kicks the door open and pulls back the curtains to a bright midday sun, your eyes are going to water. You are going to squint.
It is going to hurt.
And your immediate physical reflex is to turn away and cover your face.
The initial exposure of our deep hurts is incredibly painful.
It is. Coming out of the anesthesia requires us to actually feel the things we have spent years, sometimes decades, refusing to feel.
As the numbness wears off, the backlog of grief, the suppressed anger, the profound sorrow, the terror, it all comes rushing back to the surface.
It is a spiritual thawing process, and thawing hurts.
So how do we not run? When the sting of the light hits and every alarm bell in our body is screaming for the old, familiar trapdoor, how do we stay in the room?
We find the courage by leaning entirely into the fellowship of recovery and relying desperately on the grace of God.
We realize that we do not have to stand in the light alone.
That is exactly why we gather. We stand alongside our peers, our sponsors, and our accountability partners, people who have already walked through the sting of the light and survived.
They hold us when the stinging is too intense to bear alone.
And more importantly, we hold fiercely onto the promise of that Ephesians scripture. Christ will shine on you.
We have to undergo a fundamental shift in our understanding of God's character.
We really do.
We have to realize that his light is not a spotlight of interrogation. It is the warm, curative light of a surgeon's lamp.
It exposes the wound so that the infection can be cleaned out and the healing can begin.
We endure the temporary, agonizing sting of the light because, as the thawing continues, we begin to recognize that the pain we are feeling is not the pain of destruction.
No, it is the sensation of coming back to life. It is the blood rushing back into a limb that has been asleep for years.
The light doesn't just expose our brokenness, it shows us the actual path forward.
When you are in the dark, you are completely blind. You are just feeling along the walls, desperately searching for any trap door or fake exit you can find.
But when the light of Christ illuminates the room, it reveals the room for exactly what it is.
And more importantly, it reveals the true door. It shows us the legitimate escape route.
Which brings us to the most practical, transformative part of our discussion today. Legitimate ways out.
We are talking about moving through our predicaments rather than running away from them.
But before we can take that legitimate way out, there is a necessary prerequisite.
Right. Step one.
Exactly. The turning point for all of this is step one of the recovery journey.
What we study highlights a profound truth, that when we take this first step, everything changes.
Let's clearly define what that step is for anyone who might be new to this. Step one is the admission that we are powerless over our hurts, hang-ups, and habits, and that our lives have become unmanageable.
That admission of powerlessness is the exact moment we finally let go of the heavy door.
It is the moment we stop bracing our feet against the floorboards, look up at God and say, I am done. I cannot hold this anymore.
I am completely out of strength, and I am done trying to manufacture my own escape.
It sounds like a moment of defeat, but in the spiritual realm, it is the moment of ultimate victory.
The beauty of step one is that it creates the necessary empty space for God to work.
As long as we are full of our own efforts, our own tools, our own frantic attempts to build fake exits, our hands are too full to receive God's grace.
We are too busy saving ourselves to be saved.
But when we take that first step of surrender, our hands are empty. And into that empty space, God opens up true escape routes.
He provides legitimate ways out of our predicaments through access to His power and His grace.
But we really need to pause here and contrast these fake escapes with God's true escape routes.
Because they operate on completely different opposing principles.
They are fundamentally different in their trajectory.
Yes, a worldly escape, a fake exit, is always an attempt to remove us from reality.
It is the pursuit of absence, to vanish, to numb out, to check out completely.
It promises to transport you away from the problem, But God's legitimate way out is entirely different. How would you describe the nature of a legitimate divine way out?
A divine way out does not provide a teleportation device. It provides the grace and power to walk through the predicament.
This is a crucial, life-altering distinction.
We often come to God expecting him to act as a cosmic magician. We think, okay, God, I've surrendered. Now make the consequences of my addiction disappear, fix my broken marriage instantly, replenish my bank account overnight.
But God rarely waves a wand to erase the reality of our lives.
No, the predicament remains. The valley of the shadow of death is still right there in front of us.
Exactly. If you have caused damage to your body, your relationships, or your finances through your habits, the reality of that damage is still present.
But instead of offering you a chemical to numb the stress of it, or a distraction to ignore it, God offers you the internal fortitude, the profound wisdom, and the supernatural peace to walk directly through the middle of the storm.
It's the difference between trying to fly over a treacherous, jagged mountain range in a rickety plane that is falling apart versus having an expert, loving guide walk you step by step through the mountain pass.
When you walk the pass with the guide, you still have to do the walking.
Your boots still hit the dirt. You still feel the freezing cold air on your face. You still have to climb over the sharp rocks.
You experience the reality of the mountain, but you have access to a power greater than yourself that ensures you will absolutely make it to the other side.
You don't vanish from the mountain. You overcome it.
Overcoming is the true victory. When we rely on fake exits, our problems simply hit the pause button.
They just wait for us in the dark.
The moment the exit collapses, the mountain is still there, completely unchanged, and we haven't grown any stronger.
In fact, we are weaker. But when we choose God's legitimate way out, the actual journey through the pain changes our fundamental nature.
The process is the purpose.
Wow, that's good.
The arduous process of making difficult amends, the humbling process of facing our deep-seated character defects, the grueling process of enduring intense cravings without giving in to them, these are the very things that build spiritual muscle.
We are forged in the fire of reality.
We emerge on the other side of the predicament transformed, resilient, stronger, and more deeply rooted in our faith than we ever thought possible.
But relying on God's power requires something that is incredibly difficult for the human ego to accept.
It requires completely surrendering our illusions of control.
Because to walk through the pain, you have to let God take the lead. You have to follow his pace.
So let me ask you this. As someone who has walked this road and guided many others down it, what does it practically look like in our daily lives to choose God's grace over a quick fake exit when the pain spikes?
Well, let's set a realistic scenario.
Okay. Let's say it's a random Tuesday afternoon.
Right.
The stress at your job is overwhelming. A massive conflict just erupted in your family. You feel completely unappreciated and unseen. And suddenly, every single alarm bell in your nervous system is screaming for the old fake exit.
The craving for the drink is intense. The urge to binge is blinding. The desire to text that toxic person is pulling at you.
What is the practical, immediate step to walk through it instead of running from it?
The practical step begins with a fraction of a second. It begins with a pause.
A pause.
When the pain spikes, the urge to escape is instantaneous. It is a deeply ingrained, heavily worn reflex. Choosing God's grace means intentionally inserting a microscopic pause between the trigger and your reaction.
How do we use that pause?
In that pause, we pray the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
We physically remove ourselves from the immediate triggering environment, if possible, not to hide in a closet, but to break the visual cycle and gain perspective.
And then we do the most crucial thing of all. We reach out.
We drag the urge into the light immediately.
Exactly. We do the exact opposite of our instinct to hide. Instead of retreating into the dark room with our tool of escape, we pick up the phone.
We call our sponsor. We call a trusted friend from our small group.
We verbalize the darkness. We say, I am standing at the absolute edge right now. The urge to check out is massive, and I am terrified I'm going to fall.
There is immense power in speaking the truth out loud. The secret loses its power the moment it hits the air.
It does. By verbalizing it, we invite the light in to dispel the illusion.
And then we make the conscious choice to sit with the discomfort. This is perhaps the hardest practical step in all of recovery.
We allow ourselves to actually feel the anxiety, the anger, or the sadness without immediately scrambling for a way to shut it down.
We stand in the room without holding the door.
We stand in the room. We remind ourselves of a fundamental truth. A feeling is not a fact, and a feeling will not kill us.
The craving feels like a life or death emergency, but it is just a feeling. It will crest and it will recede.
We ask God not for a lifetime of strength, but for the specific grace, for this specific hour, to endure this specific feeling without returning to the habit.
It's about breaking the overwhelming cycle down, minute by minute if we have to. It's acknowledging reality.
Yes, this hurts. Yes, I am scared. Yes, every fiber of my being wants to escape right now, but I am choosing to stay awake.
Because staying awake, even when the night is bitterly cold and painful, is the only possible way to eventually see the morning sun.
And as we consistently choose to stay awake, as we practice moving through the storm instead of running away from it, a beautiful thing happens.
The serenity robber loses its grip on our throat.
Escape thrives entirely on our fear of pain. But as we experience God's grace sustaining us through the pain, our fear diminishes.
We realize we are not as fragile as we thought we were, because we are no longer relying on our own easily broken strength.
We are upheld by the Creator of the universe.
That is the ultimate freedom. The room with no windows, the prison we built for ourselves, suddenly becomes a room with an open door.
Not a trapdoor leading to a darker closet, but a wide-open front door leading out into a beautiful, expansive, sunlit space.
Having laid out the stark difference between the thief of escape and the sustaining grace of God, we have reached the point in our time together where we need to turn the mirror.
We have spent this time discussing the deep mechanics of hiding, the theological promise of the light, and the practical steps of surrender.
But recovery is fundamentally personal. It cannot remain an abstract theory.
It demands rigorous, unflinching honesty from each of us individually.
It absolutely does. It requires us to move from intellectual concepts to the concrete reality of our own daily lives.
We cannot address what we refuse to acknowledge. We cannot heal what we keep hidden.
So we want to address you directly, right where you're sitting, right in the midst of whatever heavy burden you are carrying today.
I want you to treat this as a holy moment of quiet reflection. This isn't a question to brush past quickly while you are distracted.
This is the starting line for the light of Christ to do its miraculous work in your life.
Here is the question. In what ways have you tried to escape your past pain? Be specific.
Do not gloss over the details. Naming the specific fate exits is the very first necessary step toward the light.
Did you lose yourself in someone else's drama to avoid looking at your own broken heart?
Did you rely on a substance to artificially dim the lights on the memories that haunt you?
Did you use food, either by binging or restricting, to create a false sense of control in a life that felt entirely chaotic and unmanageable?
Be specific. Write it down on a piece of paper. Speak it out loud to an empty room. Bring it out of the shadows.
Because here is the profound, beautiful truth we want to leave you with, building on everything we've talked about today.
The very places in your life where you have run the hardest to escape, the places of your deepest shame and your most desperate hiding, are the exact places where God wants to shine His light the brightest.
You might look at those specific destructive fake exits and feel nothing but overwhelming regret. You might think they have disqualified you from peace.
But God looks at those exact same places and sees the foundation for a miracle.
Your deepest pain, the things you have tried so desperately to keep hidden behind that heavy door, once surrendered to Him, will become the very light that helps someone else find their way out of the dark.
You are not too far gone. Your story is not disqualified. It is just waiting for the light.
The transition from a sleeper in the dark to a light bearer in the world is possible for everyone, but it requires walking through the door of fellowship and grace.
You do not have to do this alone. In fact, you were never meant to.
That is why we are here. We would love for you to join us at Peters Creek Baptist Church in South Park, Pennsylvania.
We are a community of imperfect people who have finally let go of the heavy doors and are learning to live in the light together.
Here's our weekly Friday schedule.
6:30 p.m., large group worship.
7:30 to 8:30 p.m., gender-specific small groups.
8:30 to 9 p.m., Crosstalk Cafe.
Dinner is served from 5:15 to 6 p.m., but please note that is on the final Friday of each month only.
If you have questions, reach out. Email Craig Amstone at craig.amstone@gmail.com or contact the church office at info@pcbc.church.
And if you are not local to South Park, Pennsylvania, you can find a Celebrate Recovery near you by heading to crurlocator.com and entering your zip code. We are saving a seat for you. Keep choosing the light, and we will see you on the road.